I'm just going to talk to you first about the beginnings of the project and what inspired the project, and sort of the local context of how the learning community will, we believe, impact composition here at Wayne State, and why we decided to, undergo this. So why now? If you are not familiar, engaging with the audience probably are familiar with what learning communities we have here at Wayne State, but we have, and I counted them just yesterday, so I'm hoping that the website is updated, but to me, I think I counted just under 50 total learning communities here at the university, official, here at Wayne State. What's interesting to me when I look at that, and I've looked at it before, but just looking at it recently, is that the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences has the highest number of learning communities. I mean, it's a large college, so you would imagine that there's a large number of learning communities. However, in each college of the university on the website, they list, of course, the department of which the learning community is housed. And currently, English has one learning community, so far, I'd like to say. And when you look at that, at least when I do, I see opportunity there, which is composition for me and for anyone who teaches it and any student who takes it and anyone who works within the university understands that it's a big part of student experience at Wayne State. And students' first year experience at Wayne State is also a big part of their time on campus, of their progress toward their degree. And given all the initiatives that the university has in recent years especially about students' first year experiences, there's a huge opportunity for harnessing some of that when it comes to a gen ed course that students are required to take. So it matters, of course, as I mentioned, because of general education course requirements. Obviously, freshman English 1020, their intro course, is required here at the university. Of the entering freshmen, I believe the statistics are nearly half now, just under 50%, of incoming freshmen test into the basic writing course. So we have a huge opportunity, at least I have noticed this, teaching basic writing of students who are here for not just their intro course and their intermediate course, but also for their developmental course. And what I noticed, at least anecdotally, when I was teaching basic writing full-time, and before that as a graduate teaching assistant, is that a lot of students, and this would not come to any surprise to anyone, but the narrative about writing classes is that students think they're boring, students aren't interested in them, students see them as just a requirement. They see it as just a hurdle that they need to pass. And it's interesting because just yesterday, I talked to my students about this, and we talked about it in terms of motivation, and what I called, and what we discussed in class, is a global motivation, meaning just I want to get a degree. That's the thing that I'm here for, so I need to pass this in order to pursue that degree, that end result. And then there's also what we call the local motivation, which is the motivation that is localized to whatever moment you're in, being your writing class, or your bio class, or whatever it is that you're doing in that given moment in your academic career. And what I talked about with my students just yesterday, and what I've done in the past, is that a lot of times when it comes to the local context and the local motivation, students struggle with that. They don't naturally find the purpose in any particular class, especially when it comes to gen eds. And again, sometimes this narrative is something that students are given when they come to college by their peers, or it's just a dominant narrative, right? I just need to pass. And so what I thought to myself through having these conversations with my students and having these conversations with my peers is what I saw was an opportunity to give students something to make composition visible in the university, to make writing have a local purpose, and not just within my classroom with my students, but across all of the courses of writing at Wayne State, so that students would not just see composition, this big gen ed, right, that has kind of this scary tone to it, as a thing that they just needed to get through, but a thing that they could commit to and that they could get support in, not just at the Writing Center, which is awesome, and not just through their instructors, but through each other. And so that is the local context that inspired us to come together and to do this project. And it can be also peer mentoring, and the implementation of a learning community can be a strong purpose and reason for students to want to continue their writing education here at Wayne State, to stay here, to continue their writing education through basic writing through their first year course and through their intermediate course when they have peer support along with the support of their teachers and the Writing Center. It goes without saying, I think, but I would like to point out that this comes at a very crucial time at the university in which there's a huge investment made with the recent, and I say recent as within the last 4 years, I'd say, of hiring of full-time lecturers to teach the gen ed courses. Obviously seeing the purpose there with having full-time instructors to teach gen ed courses. And so we have that investment. We also have the investment recently in the Writing Center, which became the Write Zone, a large grant that we were able to renovate the Writing Center to make it larger, to be able to increase the appointments and the hard work that Jewel and everybody else has done there. And so here you have an investment with instruction, an investment with tutoring, right? But there was a missing part of what I think is a complete triangle of student support. So we had an investment in instruction, an investment in tutoring, and now I think the learning community will complete that in that we have peer mentoring, which will give students not just the expertise of tutors, not just the expertise of their instructors, but also the support of their peers, not necessarily students who, and I'm sure my colleagues will talk more about this, but peers not necessarily who are students who are absolutely proficient as their tutors are, but students who have been there, who have been through it, who can offer that empathy and that support to each other in getting through what for a lot of students is tough. Writing classes are rigorous, writing classes cover a lot of material, and that support is important. And so as the investments have been made, we felt again it was time to provide this additional level of support that can accomplish positively affecting student dispositions, retaining students, which of course we know Wayne State has an initiative and a desire obviously to retain students, to keep them in here and engaged, changing the conversation about writing, as I mentioned, and writing classes across campus, changing the narrative, which may sound like an idealist perspective, but I have it, and making writing visible. So not disguising writing classes as this thing that people don't want to do and that they dread, but instead making it interesting and that their peers are talking about it, that they're having conversations about writing, that composition classes are fun, that they're interesting, that they're dynamic, and peer mentoring and a learning community can make this happen. So I'm going to hand it over to Adrienne. Jewel, sorry, and Jewel's going to, yeah, just the forward button.
Okay, thanks Amy. So following on Amy, I'm just going to go over a little bit of kind of the basic theoretical underpinnings of how we thought about student learning, the peer mentoring group, dispositions, and training for the mentors. So I'm going to be reading a little bit, I'll talk during there, but so as we know, our goal as teachers is to provide students with the opportunity for ongoing learning and development of student knowledge. And we hope that when we teach students, that knowledge will transfer to new contexts and encourage further learning. And we want our students to grow as academics and professional citizens. And in particular, students just beginning their academic careers are in need of support systems to aid in their enculturation into the university, which is one of kind of the purposes of our program. Yet while teachers and university programs have worked diligently to encourage student success, retention rates continue to be an issue. How then do we foster learning, transfer of skills, and academic socialization for students? We believe that a peer mentoring program does so by providing a community where successful academic dispositions are fostered. And so that's something that we're very invested in, is showing students how to become learners. However, in order for peer mentoring to be successful and sustainable, we need to make sure that we are defining what do we mean by transfer and retention. We need to make sure that we have clear expectations of the mentorships, and that mentors themselves must receive training and support for this to be a successful program. So I'm just going to go into a little bit about what we mean, at least in our group, about transfer. So the field of composition has long been invested in how students transfer writing skills from different contexts and for different tasks. Transfer can be defined as the way in which an individual takes past knowledge and uses it for the acquisition of new knowledge in the future. And so for students to be able to learn something new and to retain it, they must draw upon their past knowledge when learning material. And so some key theorists, particularly Solomon and Perkins, have talked about transfer, whether it be unconscious or conscious. So like unconscious knowledge would be that when a child learns how to tie his or her shoes, at first it's very difficult. Even if they get a new pair of shoes, the laces are a bit longer or shorter, and so they struggle with it. But then as he becomes more proficient, he can tie any shoe that he has, right? So then it's been unconscious and he transfers it over. And we do this all the time when we're driving, and I don't know how I made it to Wayne State or things like that. Whereas conscious knowledge is when a student actively and mindfully considers knowledge that he or she has acquired in the past and uses that to apply it to a new task and uses that to develop new learning strategies. Now, often what we see is that students, because they're not either mindful of the learning that they're engaging in, or they're not invested in the learning that they're engaging in, or because they have considered that their past knowledge should be used in a certain way, this type of conscious or far transfer, which is another term for Solomon Perkins, doesn't seem to occur. So we see this happen quite a bit when students move from, like, say, English 1010 to English 1020, and they've been taught key writing skills but don't see the correlation between the new writing tasks that they're being asked to produce. So one of the areas that transfer studies has begun to consider in relationship to transfer and why students do or do not transfer is dispositions. So of importance is the role of the student. As stated, to consciously transfer knowledge, one must be mindful and cognitively aware of ways in which one can apply acquired knowledge to new learning. Therefore, while learning occurs within institutional context, and we encourage that transfer, of equal importance is the role of the student and his or her own active participation in that learning. Driscoll and Wells' study on the effects of student disposition on transfer found that dispositions affect transfer, that dispositions determine how intellectual traits are used, that students' dispositions determine their willingness to learn, and that dispositions can impact learning environments between students and individuals. So if students and dispositions have become such an important impact on learning and transfer, then attention must be paid to the developing of successful learning dispositions in students. And we believe that a peer mentoring program aids in this development of mindful academic dispositions for this type of learning and transfer. And so we believe that peer mentoring groups offer new student support and advice for learning successful academic dispositions. So one of the things that was important for us when we decided about the peer mentoring is that we wanted to make sure that our peer mentors had taken the same course, and in fact, all of the peer mentors work under the same instructor who is teaching that course this semester, and that we didn't want to, like Amy said, we didn't want to choose necessarily the perfect student, but rather we wanted to choose a student who was very invested in his or her learning, had become very invested in the writing process, and had found value in that course, and saw that course as being a stepping stone for them in their academic career. And so we have a really nice group of students who are able to sit and are very invested in working with students and wanting to show them how they navigate learning and how they navigate, university context. And so even some of the conversations might just be, how do you speak to a professor, or where's a great place to study, or where would I go if I wanted help since you can't tutor me, these kinds of things. So, but we also wanted to make sure that our peer mentors were aware of their limitations and they were aware of the kind of expectations that we had for them. And so we set up training. So at the beginning of the semester we have orientation, and we go through a lengthy discussion of they're not tutors, they're mentors, right? That there are tutor support elsewhere. That's not to say that they don't have important knowledge, but their role isn't to go and sit with students and fix their papers or teach them how to write. That's the role of writing center tutors and their instructor. Their role is to make visible to students opportunities for them to learn and to engage with their instructors and other support systems on campus. And then we have, throughout the semester, we have additional meetings just to see how are things going, what kind of issues have you come across, what similar ideas have you come up with. And I believe that we still have a fair amount of mentors from last year that are working. So this is something that they seem to be very invested in, and something that it's not just a one-time thing that they're just like, oh. So this seems to be, and what we're hoping is that as the students progress through the courses, they themselves will see the importance in this program and become mentors as well, and so that will grow. And I believe next year we're going to hopefully implement a similar mentoring program for 30-10, so that we have a consistent across the board 10-10, 10-20, 30-10, particularly because each course, while building on each other, has different kind of complexities when it comes to enculturation and academic writing. So Adrienne will further discuss our dispositions and the theory of habits of mind, so that those are a little bit more specific.
That's okay. Talked
They were
about
just
it all
pictures.
beautifully. So as we talk today, you're going to hear us, you'll hear us talk about some of the same ideas in a little bit different ways. And I think that that's kind of representative of the process that we've gone through over the last year and a half as a working group, studying the concept of learning communities and reading about peer mentoring, examining our experience as composition instructors at Wayne State, and then meeting to talk through, if we do a program like this, what would it look like? Why do we want to do this? How do we see our experiences informing that process? And then just constantly circling back through that process as we continue to think about how our life in the classroom and our students' experiences here have been the things that created this need. So at some point last year, I think around February, after doing a lot of reading, we had to sit down and start to think, okay, if we're going to do this next year, we need to have those basic kind of group things, like a mission statement, something that when people ask, what do you do as a group, we could point to these ideas and use those as a way to open the door to talking about our goals. We needed to have a unified vision of what the group was going to be about. And so I'm going to reiterate some of the things that Amy and Jewel have said, that those ideas, those goals and visions entered into our more like formalizing of the group. So one of the ways that we started our discussion of the mission statement and goal statements was by looking at the Council of Writing Program Administrators Framework for Success in Post-Secondary Writing, and particularly at the habits of mind that are presented in that document. And so I've got those habits of mind up here. But we especially, while our instruction and composition works to address and support all of these habits of mind and helping students develop these, we found, I think, in our discussion and writing that we were especially interested in looking at engagement, or students' sense of investment and involvement in learning, and in responsibility, and having students consider their actions, their relationships with others in the learning process. And those two seem to be especially important when we were thinking about peer mentoring. So we wanted to develop a composition-based peer mentoring program that would support basic writing students' engagement in composition, and in the university more broadly, thinking about ideas of enculturation and retention, and first-year writing students' sense of responsibility for their own learning and contributing to the learning of others, as well as their continued engagement and involvement. So last winter into the spring, we held a series of meetings to think about how to articulate our ideas and goals. And like I said, this process happened over a few months. We would meet, we would talk, we'd leave each other, do some writing. We have this massive Google Doc that would be hard for anybody but us to figure out like what is going on in there. but we kept letting our experiences in the classroom last winter and spring inform those ideas as it took shape. And that this sort of like buy-in of the recursive process, I think, has been really important. Like, we know, even going through this pilot year of the program, that we're going to keep learning things, and we will keep kind of shifting our questions and our inquiry to learn more about how to keep building the process. So we wanted to also create something, like I said, something tangible, mission statement and goal statements. We needed a broad, flexible mission statement, and we had to think about action. What did we hope to do with this learning community? One of our key goals was simply just to build community, working as part of a student support system on campus. And we wanted to emphasize connections between 1010 and 1020, the kinds of transfer connections that Jewel was talking about, but even just a sense of like purposeful connection between courses. So not just students' knowledge about why they're, what they can take with them, but why all of these things are important. Jewel wrote in one of our, oops, I'm going really fast. She had this in the group notes, and when I was going through them a couple weeks ago, I thought this was a great nugget of our goals. What we want to encourage is another area of support for students, acculturation, understanding of academic life, writing, engagement, connections, habits in mind that encourage student success. Specifically for students who might be a bit behind the curve and need help with those connections and feelings that they belong. So I think this shows that for us, the peer mentoring program we envisioned was just as much about the social element and the idea of feeling like you're a part of something as it was about helping support them as writers and as students. We hope that peer mentors could help us as instructors in creating the conditions of learning, the environment in which all of these habits of mind could be developed and fostered. Because after all, while we know the curriculum, we construct the curriculum and we teach it. And once upon a time, we took introductory college writing courses. In fact, my students this year, they were born the year I took my intro college writing course. So I've now reached that like moment of my life. We haven't experienced, though, what it means to be a first-year writing student at Wayne State in 2015. I don't know what it means to balance learning this curriculum with doing my chemistry lab work, with trying to find a quiet place to study in the UGL, with trying to temper the distraction of Instagram or Twitter or whatever social media platform, because I'm quite limited to one. We don't live in towers. We're not missing class to go to fencing meets and trying to make up everything. We're not the ones who actually have to do the assignments that we're teaching. We read them, but we don't have to figure out how to do them necessarily the same way. And of course, we don't know what it's like to have us as teachers. But our peer mentors would know that. They've been through the process before. Having experienced our courses and written the projects, having balanced the writing work that they're expected to do in our classrooms with their lives, that we, as Wayne State students, they'd be able to communicate meaningfully and contribute meaningfully to the learning experiences of other students. So we had that idea, and we spent some time free writing on all the habits of mind as a group, and we worked through last spring drafting statements that we hoped would capture these goals. So here's our mission statement. And this concept of, you'll see the concept of community, we've talked about that a lot. It was really important for us to capture. Students across the university share the experience of taking gen ed writing courses and experiences, which, as we've talked about, is more than just about developing content knowledge. Valuable writing process and discourse community knowledge is cultivated by conversation with others who've experienced the same writing scene. I was writing this trying to use like all the vocabulary that we have to use in class, so hopefully that works. And then we also made a goal statement. By framing membership in the writing class as membership in a discourse community, we hope to foster a sense of engagement in students' learning and participation and their enculturation in university writing and general education courses, helping them make connections between their ideas and the ideas of others, finding meaning in the ideas they examine in our classes. And we also have some objectives. You can see we got really excited about alliteration the day that we made these. it's anyway, composition, we like a lot of C's, we want everything to be like all whatever. So they show that, but they also reinforce the concept of community, that we're trying to support collaboration between students and peer mentors, students and teachers of composition courses. So many connections between people is essential to the formation of a learning community. Emphasizing connections between learning outcomes and the content of the courses is valuable for helping students transfer writing-related knowledge. Building culture is imperative for an institution that strives to have students identify with the university and find a home here, to see that it's more about just showing up and coming to class and like leaving again to go to work or do something outside of campus. And finally, creating solidarity, helping students and teachers find a sense of responsibility to the core goals of the curriculum and for each other's learning and improvement is integral to the success of a peer mentoring program and learning community, and I think supports the comp program's goals overall. So during this year, we're piloting our program, and Nicole's going to share some of the ways that we've seen this mission and these goals come to light over the last few months, and talk about our first pilot semester.
Thank you.
Hi.
So, you've heard about getting this program up and running. You've heard about the brainstorming, composing, revising of the mission statement, our goals and objectives. All of that's one thing. But implementing this in an actual peer mentoring program for a pilot semester is quite another. If you, like us, love talking about ideas and getting together with friends, you know that it can be kind of fun to talk about theory and reading and let's craft a mission statement, and it's quite a treat. When we approached implementation, however, we were faced with actually putting these building blocks together. So what happened? Well, we started with what we had. We had our own courses in the composition program, and as Jewel mentioned, we tapped pilot peer mentors from our previous courses. For our pilot semester, we had 6 active peer mentors, which whittled down to 5 by December. As of this week, our winter 2015 peer mentor cohort has 10 active members. 13!
High five, air high five.
Air five. Over doubling our participation. So this, especially I want to draw attention to the more than doubling of our peer mentor participation, because to me it suggests a couple of things. First, as we've worked through a semester with our peer mentors crafting this learning community, we've learned some things, we've noticed what happens with peer mentor availability, our current student participation, our own organizational and administrative goals. And we've made adjustments to accommodate all of those variables. Second, and maybe more importantly to me, this jump in participation suggests very strongly that our mission statement is being enacted. We are, to me, very clearly creating a community that students are hearing about, seeing in action, and wanting to be a part of. And that's exciting. As students see their peer mentors hanging out after class, just yesterday, one of my students approached a current peer mentor to ask how to follow the course blog on her phone. And they crouched over their phone and figured it out together. And to me, that was just a shining example of what we hope to see happen. So at the very least, we've noticed the need for this community. This community needed to happen. And now, at best, we've created the community, and at least we've named it and started it growing. So for example, if you head back to our mission statement, through this program, building community with which students talk about, talk through, and reflect on the lived experience of composition at Wayne State University. As we planned and executed our second semester peer orientation last week, peer mentor orientation, this community that has existed on campus for many years, the composition community. Students have been taking composition at Wayne State for many years. So they've been a part of this community that perhaps they never even realized was a community. It's beginning to come into clear view for peer mentors and for students. So peer mentors last week took time out of their busy first week of class to come together in the English department to listen, talk, reflect, plan, and get ready for this coming semester. A metaphor that we've been using to help peer mentors, as Joel mentioned, they're not tutors, they're volunteers. We don't pay them because we can't. And thus we don't put any pressure on them to be any kind of expertise or authority, as they shouldn't have to be. That's for right zone tutors and for instructors. A metaphor we've been using to help them distinguish between those tasks is that peer mentors are composition alumni. We're creating an alumni association for composition courses here at Wayne State. Returning peer mentors especially used this metaphor when they were sharing and helping to train new peer mentors. So that was exciting to see returning peer mentors sort of using that conceptualization and using the language. And as they were talking from their own experience as opposed to abstract theories or rules, they were able to bring specific examples of student interaction to bear, which was also very exciting to see them pulling from past experiences to help train the new peer mentors. I must have heard a dozen times during orientation, you can always say, well, this is how it was for me, which I thought was beautiful and a really apt way to describe what we're trying to get at here, the lived experience of composition. Well, this is how it was for me, or this is what I did. This is how I handled that project. And this is the kind of exact deep resources of personal lived experience that we want our current students and our peer mentors to be able to draw from. It's a rich well of experiences that we just needed to tap. So further, in our goal statement, we talk about wanting to support students in culturation and engagement in composition course work. So we've seen much of this fruition mainly in our peer mentors themselves. Through enculturation, they are able to foster with each other as co-peer mentors and with current students. So like I said, they're volunteering their time to reach out to our first year writing students here at Wayne State and form a support network for them as we've described. And what I've found is that for peer mentors themselves, their sense of pride and belonging to this learning community is intense. And it's beautiful to see that their knowledge and experience that they've had in composition courses here at Wayne State is translating into tangible support that they can give their fellow students. And this is giving them, at least from anecdotal stories that they've shared with me, a great sense of satisfaction. Several students at orientation talked about, I'm just so happy to help just one student, just one, if I could just help one person. And then of course, we can get into like, oh, well, if you could help one person, how many more people could you help? So this sense of belonging and enculturation, I think, is really beginning to take root, especially with our peer mentors themselves. They feel a part of something, and there's an energy that comes from feeling like you're a part of something. And that energy, number one, it can't be faked. And number two, it can't be missed. So again, this becomes almost its best advertising in that students see peer mentors being excited, feeling a sense of pride and engagement and responsibility, that then they have something to sort of hope for or aspire to. So one of our current peer mentors actually reflected on it and said it quite well, I thought. She wrote in her reflection at orientation, my goals are to personally go along with the class, strengthening my abilities, as well as passing on new things that I learned as a student in English 1020. She writes, I want to make very apparent that I came into English 1020 oblivious and left writing all the time. So starting from this engagement that the peer mentors demonstrate, current first-year writing students can begin to buy into the sense of community as well. So here are just a couple of action shots from our orientation. As you can see, the spread of pizza is also quite a big draw. And here are some of our peer mentors as we had taken time to break apart and do some reflective writing to get prepped for the semester. So these are some of the things that we've experienced in our 1 and 2 weeks of piloting this peer mentoring program. But that doesn't mean we're stopping. We're not resting on our laurels here. We have several goals that we are going to set in our sights for the coming years. Our first goal is to continue to build our community. As you see, we've got a handful of instructors who are involved in this, and we'd like to expand it and invite other composition instructors to become a part of the peer mentoring community. And as Jewel mentioned, we've absolutely got our sights set on 30-10. We want to shift our inquiry to begin to track some of the data that we are only anecdotally noticing right now, but we'd like to get in a little bit more of a formal fashion. We've been talking a lot about student dispositions and the theory that this peer mentoring program supports fostering positive student dispositions. Well, we'd like to track that and see if that's actually something we can support with some data. And we'd also like to pay attention to how the peer mentoring community helps with retention, if it does, if it's connected at all. So those are some sort of more inquiry-based goals for us. But Amy mentioned earlier in the presentation that one of our hopes is to make writing visible. And so here's where one of the most exciting ways that we can make writing visible is that we are having our first Wayne State University Writing Showcase this semester, April 16th. We're going to display work from our students, their choice. They're going to create presentations to demonstrate to a public audience what is it you do in English 1020. We're going to create this showcase for an audience of 1010 students who can come and sort of maybe demystify a little bit, like what is this class? And also we're going to invite other instructors and administrators, definitely in the English department, but hopefully across the university. This kind of writing showcase has a long history. It is sometimes called like a celebration of student writing, but it's something that universities across the United States have been doing for several years that I personally would like to see Wayne State get on board with, a kind of first-year writing showcase to make writing visible. Any questions?
Just logistically.
Such efficient that there's still time for questions and
Yes.
comments.
Let's have a
So
conversation.
just logistically, the student is in the class. Is that part of how they volunteer? They are in the class.
Yes.
And make acquaintance with the other students.
As far as we've worked it so far, we have a couple of points of contact for peer mentors to engage with students. So they create, number one, a welcome video at the beginning of the semester that we can post on our course sites to sort of get an orientation. They provide their email as a contact for students. But then we also require, as part of our program, that peer mentors be available to come to class for at least 2 sessions. They can come more. We have a couple of students who are so on board with this that they come once a week.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. Last semester I had a peer mentor in my morning class who was there every day.
Yeah.
Because it was right before one of her classes. She just came to my class every day. It was amazing. It really was.
So they can be there to just listen, to take in what we as instructors are doing in the classroom, and then be better able to orient students if they have questions of like, well, when should I get started with my XYZ? And then also sometimes we'll have them actually give a brief informal presentation about, well, how was this for you? Hey, you remember doing this genre analysis. Can you talk about how you got through it? Oh yeah. Would you like to see our welcome video?
Is the volume on or no?
The volume should be fine. We have speakers if you need.
That would be out here.
Maybe I'll give it a short question. Oh, it's gonna be glitchy.
I just want to
As your mentors, we're going to help guide you through the course by sharing our experiences as 10-20 students.
Through the projects and the vlogs, we've been through it all. And we're here to share our top secret information about what works and what doesn't.
We're here to help you brainstorm, revise papers, and learn the key concepts that will help you pass this course. We're here to help you through every step of the way.
We want you to have a great semester.
Feel free to contact us at any time by email or phone by referencing the peer mentor contact page designated by your instructor.
See you in class!
The 45 minutes they spent,
Yes.
I think, drafting and practicing. It was
They had multiple scripts. They did one take, and then actually I heard as we were listening, one of the students said, "That was a good screen test. Let's do another one." So that's the kind of investment and sense of responsibility that we are looking for in this peer mentoring program.
Could you say a little bit more about how the mentors do seem invested, but how do they identify why they're invested, or when you're recruiting these mentors, what is it? Because they're not being compensated anyway, right? for their
Not
time.
at
Pizza.
Pizza
You know,
and,
pizza is
potential
a
references.
powerful motivator. Yeah, and perhaps references as well.
Right.
Or do they kind of articulate why they're interested, or do you try to convince them to be mentors?
Well, I think we go about it in different ways. I ask students face to face, like specific students
Okay,
that
so
I've
you
seen.
pick them ahead of time.
However, it's obviously not given that those students will say yes. And the students who do say yes have given me, if you can believe it, mainly altruistic reasons. I just want to help. I just want to be involved. I just want to give my time. I mean, they really do just want to volunteer to help other people. I know that two of my students in particular, one is an English major, one's an anthropology major, and they are both not only interested in teaching English, but they both have hopes of studying abroad through Wayne State and teaching English through
Oh, okay, yeah.
a particular program. So they see that as professional development and potential
Sure, yeah.
references from me particularly. So
Most of my peer mentors are health sciences tracks. One, though, is pre-med. She just declared an English major last semester. So it's actually kind of opened up that path a little bit more. I have one who was a math and secondary ed, one of my current peer mentors, and he's thinking about English as a possibility. But I don't, I kind of do a broad recruitment. I present the opportunity to all my students and then hope. and actually, and I was very thankful, the two students that I really hoped would join from my class last semester are the two students who did, and I didn't, and there are students who are invested in the class, who are willing to take constructive criticism and have shown growth. They're not always, like we've said earlier, like the prize English student, but they're good students in general. And I think the same kinds of motivations, like just really wanting to be involved with people and help out. So.
Like Adrienne said, this semester in particular, I also do a blanket invitation. And this semester I have a student who is taking my class again. She did not pass, and she is incredibly motivated, and she wanted to be part of the mentoring program because she wanted to share that experience with others, and knowing that she has peers who are in the same position as she is, and she wanted to motivate those peers to not be discouraged in writing, because she just feels like she has that to share, and she's, in her own words, like, quote, "It's nothing to be ashamed of."
Yeah.
And So then that's a sentiment that is felt oftentimes when that happens with students, and so, you know, the motivations are different, and unique too with basic writers as well.
I think there's like so much potential here for, I don't know, I counted in my head at least like half a dozen different very formal ways that you could track just these kind of very important but seemingly distanced ideas, like you know, how many people choose to stay on campus, right? You mentioned that. How long they stay on campus could be directly related to this, or whether they live on campus versus staying on campus for longer periods of time. So that's awesome, but I'm wondering if you've thought about like, or seen any like similarities between your model and other models of existing programs sort of like this, because it struck me while you were presenting that there are like several community outreach or like public service-based models, right, that kind of look similar to this and have had a lot of success. And I'm wondering if you guys maybe thought about,
Like outside the university?
yeah, wondering if you thought about maybe speaking to that or trying to find some connections to even see what you got there.
Well, I mean, I think that for us, our main focus as we were reading was looking at academic models. So, and since Wayne State has such a thriving learning community, we were kind of taking that as our main inspiration to see what's that all about, and could something like what already exists here at Wayne be revised and fit into the composition program specifically. So I can't say that we looked at a lot of nonprofit or social civic models for this, because we were mainly focusing on peer mentoring, academic peer mentoring communities and academic learning communities.
I suppose I ask because one of those half dozen would be like, this model would easily map onto any number of programs in the community where you could connect these
Like
two
Big
things.
Brother.
Big Brother, Big Sister. You could even look at Hand in House and how they work with retirees and match people up to try and get them more involved in the area so that they don't turn into just shut-ins. There are a lot of, I think, potentials here, I guess, to expand. Obviously not in the immediate future. You guys are just piloting this, but it's a very interesting prospect, I think, and a nice flexible model.
I think that's definitely something to consider given the service learning component of our department. And in the future, whatever,
You're
you
reading my
and I
mind.
have talked
You're
about
reading
it,
my
so-
mind.
So I feel like we're having a conversation
Yep.
here. Yeah, I got you. But yeah, I think as Nicole said, one of the first things I think we researched were successful learning community or
Right.
peer mentoring communities in writing in other universities. And then what I recall we did was in the initial research was look at those mission statements and goals in those programs and sort of map them over what existing learning communities at Wayne State were successful in doing, and try to build from that model and go from there. Obviously, we're not at the point of compensation yet, but it's work. I'm delighted at how well it works without offering that. You know, and that speaks to my investments in the difference between intrinsic value and rewards and punishment-based motivation. So.
Other questions?
Well, thank you. Thank you.